Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Wrath of the Triple Goddess by Riordan. Chapter 1. I have an accident in the principal's office. October. Best month ever. The air was crisp, the leaves were changing colours in Central Park, and my favourite food cart on 86th Street was serving pumpkin spice burritos. On top of all that, I'd had zero recent trouble from the mythological world. No gods had knocked on my door demanding that I run their errands. No monsters had tried to kill me. For 3 blissful weeks, I'd been a normal senior in high school. And when you're the demigod son of Poseidon, normalcy is a nice change of pace, even if it comes with a side of homework and weekend tutoring. You may be wondering, why would a powerful demigod in his last year of high school need trivial help like weekend tutoring? Maybe you haven't met me. For starters, I'm dyslexic with ADHD. Little things like reading and paying attention are tougher for me than, say, leaping out of a classroom window to fight a fire-breathing boar. Weirdly, teachers don't grant extra credit for slaying monster pigs. Also, I've missed my entire junior year thanks to some business we won't go into, Hera, on account of some meddling gods, Hera, for reasons of a cosmic apocalypse, Hera. So there I was at alternative high school, the only place that would let me complete a diploma in time to attend college with my girlfriend, in order to make up for all the credits I'd missed through no fault of my own, Hera. I had to take weekend courses. On Saturdays, I had a dual-credit Spanish class with Dr. Hernandez at Borough of Manhattan Community College. Sundays, I took on online chemistry class. Maybe Monday mornings, when I really needed a break, I'd stumble into school with a throbbing headache and try to get through my regular classes without letting my brain leak out of my ears. Every once in a while, my school counsellor, Eudora, would step out of her office and give me a thumbs up. "You're doing great." But mostly she left me alone. She was secretly a nereid, working for my father. I think I made her nervous. Either that or she was afraid to ask how my college recommendations were coming along. I'd done a quest for Ganymede and gotten a letter from him, but I still needed endorsements from 2 more Greek gods if I wanted to get into New Rome University, and they weren't going to come for free, of course. My application deadline was approaching, and things had been quiet. Too quiet. In fact, things were so quiet I fell asleep in English class and didn't realise it until the teacher stood right over me and said, "Percy?" I jolted awake. Luckily, I didn't draw my sword. "Theme," I yelled, because that's the question I'd been preparing to answer before I nodded off. The theme is free will versus fate." Mrs. Foray frowned. The other students tried not to laugh. "Your aunt is in the office." Mrs. Foray handed me a note. "She's come to pick you up." There were several problems with this. First, it made me look like a doofus, being picked up by a family member when I was perfectly capable of taking the subway. I even had my driver's license, though driving in New York was way scarier than most quests I'd been on. Second, if I left school early, it would mean makeup work and grumpy teachers. Third, I didn't have an aunt, at least not on the human side of my family. I mumbled an apology to Mrs. Foray, wiped drool off my cheek and headed for the office. Something told me I'd still be able to use that answer about free will versus fate. It seemed to be the theme of my life. When I passed the counsellor's office, Eudora stuck her head out, looking startled. "Hi," I said. "You know anything about—" "Shh, I'm not here." She closed her door. That was a little weird, even for her. I wondered if nereids were like groundhogs. Maybe if they saw their shadows when they poked their heads out of their dens, it meant 6 more weeks of hibernation. When I got to the reception desk, the secretary was standing there frozen, staring at nothing. She pointed at the principal's office and murmured, "They are waiting." Entranced secretary, probably not a good sign. I rapped my knuckles on the principal's door. It creaked open. Inside, Dr. Samuels sat motionless at her desk, her eyes glassy. Next to her stood a middle-aged woman in a dark sleeveless gown. A chain of diamonds glittered around her neck. Her hair was a thicket of black tufts, wreathed in a halo of green fire. Flaming hair, definitely not a good sign. "Ah, good," said the woman in black. She glanced at the principal. "You may leave us now." Dr. Samuels rose and wandered off, closing the door behind her. I imagined my school administrators were going to get pretty tired of having their jobs taken by mythological beings. First Eudora became my guidance counsellor, now this woman in black was moving into the principal's office. One of these days I was going to find that our athletic director had been replaced by a poison-breathing dragon, though on second thought, I'm not sure anyone would notice the difference. The woman in black settled into the principal's chair. She smoothed her hands across the armrests as if assessing her new throne. She seemed to find it satisfactory. Before she could start laughing maniacally or monologuing about how the school was now hers, all hers, I decided I'd better speak. "Hi," I said. I have a way with words. You may continue to stand, Percy Jackson. She ran her fingers lovingly across the chipped formica desk. I do not anticipate this will take long. I tried to not dwell on the many ways she could kill me instantly. And you are? I didn't mean to sound rude. Sometimes the gods just don't think to introduce themselves, and I was beginning to suspect this lady was in the god category of super-powerful, annoying things. Her onyx eyes glittered. She sat forward and laced her fingers, looking more like a principal than my real principal ever did. You may call me the Torchbearer, the Star Walker, the Night Wanderer, the Disturber of the Dead, the daughter of Perseus and Asteria, the Triple Goddess. Uh-huh, I said, still clueless. You're probably thinking, Percy, you've been dealing with the Greek gods for years. How could you not know her? The thing is, immortals are always changing their appearance, and there are hundreds of Greek gods. Also, they're reluctant to give you straight answers. It's never, hi, I'm Zeus. It's always, I am the Thunder Maker, the Paranoid Patriarch, Heavenly Adulterer, Lightning Breeches, King of Luxurious Beard Products. The Triple Goddess thing did spark a memory somewhere in the back of my mind, but Greek myth land is full of triple goddesses. The Fates, the Grey Sisters, the Furies, Destiny's Child. I couldn't keep track of them all. I waited for the goddess to elaborate. That seemed like the safest thing to do. She frowned. Maybe she was irritated that I didn't grovel or burn on an offering or something. I am Hecate, she said, loud and slow, goddess of magic, crossroads, necromancy? My tongue turned to sand. I'd never formally met Hecate, but I knew her work. I remembered her from such hits as I joined Kronos during the Battle of Manhattan, but then switched sides, and I helped your friend Hazel fight a giant, but only after I knew the giants would lose. Hecate had always struck me as a team player, as soon as she was sure which team would win. Right, I said. Lady Hecate. My continued lack of grovelling did not seem to please her. Well, she was going to have to deal with it. I wasn't much of a groveller. I assume you've had a restful few weeks? She asked. The other gods have left you alone as I requested. Wait, as you requested? She waved her hand like she was clearing smoke. I told them to stay away from you. I couldn't risk you getting damaged or killed before you undertook my quest. My fingernails cut grooves into my palms. I remembered something my girlfriend, Annabeth, had once told me. Always count to 5 before saying something in anger to divine beings. This would theoretically reduce my chances of being turned into a smouldering heap of charcoal briquettes. I managed to count to 2. There were other gods who wanted to give me quests. Oh yes, several. And you told them you were off limits. I needed you fresh for this week. A few ancient Greek cuss words floated through my mind. I only needed 2 more recommendation letters. Apparently, I couldn't have gotten them both by now, except Hecate had snatched me from the jaws of success. This time, I counted to 3 before responding. I was improving. And these other quests would have been unworthy of your time, Hecate insisted. Fetching a box of cupcakes for Aphrodite, a day of water skiing with Hermes, all much too easy. Water skiing and cupcakes. I decided not to scream, because if Hecate was scary enough to keep all the other gods away from me, she was scary enough with a capital scare. And your quest is worthy of my time? Absolutely. Your task shall be... Hold on. In the back of my mind, a red light flashed. A warning, a memory. Something Eudora had told me. Oh, right. My counsellor told me I need to request dual credit before I undertake a quest, I said. So, if I have to do favours for any other gods along the way, they can write me recommendation letters too. Hecate spread her arms generously. That's no problem. Great. Because no other gods will be involved in what I'm asking you to do, so it won't matter. She beamed like she was waiting for a thank you. What's the quest? I grumbled. Pet sitting. Excuse me? Pet sitting. Starting tonight through Friday evening, you will stay at my house and watch my animals. As you know, this is an important time of year for me. Because, Friday, Halloween. It made sense that the goddess of creepy stuff would have that date circled on her calendar. The only problem was, my friends and I already had plans for Friday. Alas, Hecate sighed, my sacred days used to happen at the end of every month. I would travel the world collecting gifts that my worshippers left for me on their doorsteps. Over the past few centuries, the offerings have been slim. But at the end of October, people still remember me. So I must travel the world and make my presence known. While I'm gone, you must watch my hellhound and polecat. There was a lot to unpack in that statement. My big takeaway was that Hecate was going trick-or-treating. She seemed to believe that Halloween had been created just for her. On the other hand, that was some god-level narcissism. On the other hand, who was I to stand between goddess and her Tootsie Rolls? So these pets, I said. I know a little about hellhounds, but polecats. Do they eat polecat chow? Anything I should know? Hecate chuckled. Many things, but we'll go over that later. She produced a black business card, which she slid across the table. Written on the front in glistening red like fresh blood was an address. The Manse, Gramercy, Park West. Arrive at sunset, she said. Then I will go over the rules for keeping my pets healthy and happy. Sunset tonight. She frowned. Do you have water in your ears? Yes, tonight. You may bring those friends of yours, Anna and Grover Beth. Close enough, I thought. OK, I'll do it, I said, because what choice did I have? But I must not have sounded very excited. Hecate rose from her desk. Percy Jackson, I am offering you the chance for a recommendation letter from me, a major goddess, the torchbearer, the Star Walker. Yeah, I get it. It's just that I'll have to move a few things around on my schedule. Hecate lifted her arms. Darkness spread from the folds of her dress, filling the room with an inky fog. This will be an easy assignment, Percy Jackson. If you succeed, I will be grateful. If you fail me, however. Her body shimmered and stretched. Suddenly I was looking at 3 distinct goddesses, all linked at the torso like gemstones on a single ring. On the left, a girl with milk-white skin and platinum blonde hair fixed me with a steely gaze that said, Pull my pigtails, I dare you. In the middle stood the Hecate I had been talking to, a middle-aged lady with the most disapproving mum face I'd seen since my last brunch at Heroes. On the right, a wizened old woman with ashen hair gave me a sour scowl. Honestly, I wasn't sure which face scared me the most. I am the maiden, said Hecate in a chorus of 3 voices. I am the mother. I am the crone. I am all phases of a woman's life, all her power, and I will suffer no man to cross me. A tremor went through my body. My legs shook. But she wasn't done with me yet. She changed again. Her 3 faces became animal heads. On the left, a palomino horse whinnied angrily. In the middle, a lioness snarled and bared her fangs. On the right, a hound growled and slavered, its eyes ablaze. I am the horse that runs strong and fearless, she said, her voice unchanged. I am the lion that prowls stealthy and patient. I am the hound that stands guard, loyal and fierce. I am goddess of the crossroads, where all possibilities intersect. I devour those who waver before me. My body felt flushed, warm, damp and unpleasant. My gut seemed to dissolve into my jeans. Finally, the room cleared of darkness. Before me stood Hecate in a single form, the way she'd been at the beginning. She gave me a tight smile, probably because she could see that she'd made her point. See you tonight, then, she said. Ciao. In a burst of green fire, she disappeared, leaving nothing behind but the smell of burning animal hair. I stared at Dr. Samuel's education degrees framed on the wall. When I felt like my legs could move again, I wobbled out of the office. I needed to finish my school day. I needed to contact Annabeth and Grover, but first I needed to go to my gym locker and change my undershorts. Chapter 2. Grover gets heavily caffeinated. Fun fact, said Grover. Obscure knowledge is called trivia because of Hecate's Roman name. Trivia. 3 roads. That may be a fact, I said, but it's not fun. Ah, come on, you got a quest. This is great news. Grover danced and skipped along the sidewalk in front of me. The cooler October weather always made him perky. As soon as I'd mentioned my encounter with Hecate, he'd gotten even more excited. Today his shaggy hindquarters were stuffed into cargo pants. His goat hooves were sort of not really concealed in a modified pair of orange Crocs, because inconspicuous. His horns peeked through his shaggy hair. His blue hoodie was emblazoned with the word human. I'd never understood Sato rules for blending into the mortal world. Usually they tried to disguise themselves as people to some extent. Mostly they seemed to rely on the mist, the veil that confused human vision, to do the job for them. But when Grover opted for Crocs and a human hoodie, I had to wonder why he bothered at all. Maybe he was trying to explode mortal brains. You're just excited about the pets, I guessed. Grover grinned from ear to ear, which made him look like he had extra AI-generated teeth. If Hecate's hellhound is anything like Mrs. O'Leary, I'll love her. I wouldn't bet on that. And polecats. Grover paused. Actually, I'm not sure I've ever met a polecat, but I'm willing to make friends. Come on. He trotted down Lexington Avenue. We'd met at the 103rd Street subway station, our usual after-school rendezvous point. Now we were going to visit my mum at her favourite cafe, where she was trying to finish writing her new book. Normally, I wouldn't have interrupted her while she was working, but I figured I'd better tell her about Hecate's quest as soon as possible, since we were supposed to start the pet-sitting gig that night. Also, Grover liked seeing my mum. Also, he liked the cafe's pastries. It was a win-win. New York is weird at the best kind of ways. You can be strolling down the avenue, past banks and pharmacies and cell phone stores, feeling like you're in the middle of a cookie-cutter anywhere land. Then you turn left and suddenly you're on a side street where the old brownstone mansions have been converted into bohemian apartments. The trees are aglow with string lights year around, and the storefronts are a mixture of holistic laundromats, tarot card salons and cryo shock spas and cafes. The best cafe of all? The Cracked Teapot. No hate to the folks who hang out at Starbucks, writing their screenplays or whatever, but if you really want inspiration, find a local, one-of-a-kind place like the Cracked Teapot. All the string lights on the street seem to emanate from the cafe's front porch, like the centre of a festive electric web that nobody had bothered to clear away and now covered the whole neighbourhood. We walked down the steps to the garden level, through a bead-curtained doorway, and into a cosy maze of nooks and parlours. Soft, otherworldly music was playing. Celtic harp, maybe? Fairy godmother dolls hung from the ceiling. On every available sunny windowsill, cats were napping, which may or may not have been against city health codes, but I wasn't going to tell. All through the cafe, shelves were filled with, you guessed it, cracked teapots. Some were gold and porcelain, some copper, some rainbow ceramic. Stuffed animals popped out of many of them. Behind the counter, a large bearded dude in a pink tutu was making coffee. The display case overflowed with muffins, cookies, cakes and scones. Could I have written a novel there? No way. Aside from the fact that I could never write a novel anywhere, this place was way too distracting. I guess that's proof that I got my ADHD from my dad's side. My mum loved working there. It was only a few blocks from our apartment, and with the baby coming, she felt the deadline for her second manuscript pressing down on her. It was a race between the baby and the book, and the baby was winning. Grover and I ordered drinks and snacks from the ballet dancer. Then we found my mum at her usual table in the back, where sunlight slanted through a transom window, warming a big black cat on the sill and refracting through dozens of crystal pendants that reminded me a little too much of the goddess Iris. My mum's hair was pulled back in a bun to keep it from falling in her face while she typed. She leaned forward, her face glowing in the light of the laptop screen, like she wanted to dive into the world she was creating. She wore a stretchy dark skirt to accommodate her baby bump and one of my stepdad's t-shirts, a black one with a picture of a dude playing a stand-up bass under the name Charles Mingus. Next to her was a steaming pot of tea, probably lemon balm herbal, which she'd started drinking instead of coffee since she got pregnant. She rarely ate here. She made her own baked goods, so I guess she didn't see the point. But the cafe staff loved her regardless. They never complained if she took up her table for the whole afternoon. I was worried she might frown when she saw us walking up, since we were technically interrupting her workday, but she smiled with relief. "Boys," she said. "Sorry to barge in," Grover said. "Not at all." She patted the chair next to her. "Save me from this dialogue, please. I think it's trying to kill me." Grover slid in next to her. I sat across the table. I'm always careful not to look at my mum's screen while she's writing because A, I know it makes her nervous, B, the floating words make me queasy, and C, I can't help wondering if she's writing a character based on me. Maybe that sounds self-centered, but the idea of anybody writing a book about me makes me super paranoid. "So, what's going on?" she asked me. "New quest?" "It's like, you know me." She laughed. "Tell me all." She must have been worried. Over the last 17 years, I put her through a chariot load of stress, but she'd gotten good at keeping her tone light and supportive. Honestly, I'm not sure how she did it. The only job harder than being a demigod is being a demigod's mum. I told her about my visit to the goddess principal's office. I left out a few need-to-know details like Hekate's three-headed horror show and my subsequent change of underwear. I just finished bringing her up to speed when Mr. Ballerina brought us our order. A blueberry smoothie for me, a double-shot latte and a strawberry muffin for Grover. I gave Grover the side eye. There are two things that will send him into a hyperactive meltdown. One is coffee, the other is strawberry-flavoured anything. "It'll be fine," he promised when he saw me judging. "I'm going to jog to the park after this, pick up some supplies for tonight. I'll burn off all the extra energy." I wondered what kind of supplies he could pick up in Central Park. I imagined him showing up at Hekate's house with a basket full of squirrels. "And this place, the manse," my mum said. "Where is it?" I took out the blood-inscribed business card and handed it to her. She read the address and her smile crumbled. "Oh." "Oh?" I asked. She gazed at the cat sleeping in the window as if it might have advice for her. "Nothing. I haven't been to Gramercy Park in a very long time. Did I ever tell you?" She hesitated, thinking better of whatever she was about to say. "No, it's fine. Promise me you'll be careful." "It's fine" and "be careful" are not statements that go together well, especially when it's your mum talking. Also, she said Gramercy Park the way I said Tartarus. I wasn't sure if she was holding something back because it was a bad memory or because Grover was with me, or both. She shouldn't have worried about Grover. He was obsessed with his muffin and coffee. Once he went into snacking mode, the only danger was that he might devour everything else on the table, including my smoothie, the teapot, and my mum's laptop. I always try to be careful, I promised. Emphasis on try. I waited to see if she would say anything else. When she didn't, I made a mental note to follow up with her later. One thing about me and my mum, she never pushes me to talk about something if I'm not ready. I tried to give her the same courtesy. Meanwhile, Grover was dabbing up the last of his muffin crumbs. I could practically feel him starting to vibrate. "We should get going," he said. Let's, lots to do. I've got to run around the park and you have to pack for tonight. Meet up at sunset, right?" I nodded, still focused on my mum. "You want me to wait around at the apartment until you get home?" I asked her. I was thinking I could have dinner with her and Paul and give her another chance to tell me why Gramercy Park bothered her so much. No, that's all right. She managed to reconstruct her careful smile. "This should be a memorable Halloween experience for you. At any rate, Hecate is the goddess of ghosts, isn't she? And magic," Grover volunteered, "and nighttime, and manipulating the mist." I frowned. Hecate had run through her entire resume while she was terrifying me with flames and animal heads, but she left out the part about manipulating the mist. I wondered why. Now that I thought about it, my friend Hazel had said something along those lines, how the goddess had encouraged her to learn that skill. My mum reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I should probably try to get some more writing done. Keep me posted if you can. And remember to pack your toothbrush, okay?" We were going to spend Halloween week in a creepy goddess's house, and all my mum was worried about was my dental hygiene. I guess she had to focus on the things she could help with. "I will," I said. Good luck with the writing." I realised I'd barely tasted my blueberry smoothie. I carried it out while Grover bounced along at my side, rambling about his strategies for making friends with godly house pets. I glanced back at my mum one last time. She was frowning intently at her computer screen, but I doubted she would be doing any more writing this afternoon. Instead, she'd be Googling Hecate. I wondered what about Gramercy Park had made her so unsettled. I had a feeling I'd soon find out. Chapter 3. My girlfriend takes me to the graveyard. After grabbing my demigod go bag, complete with toothbrush, at home, I headed downtown to find Annabeth. The School of Design, New York City, is a private boarding school not far from Gramercy Park. I figured it would be easier to find Annabeth there in person rather than try to send an iris message. Demigods can't use cell phones, monster, homing beacon, instant death, etc. Iris messages are a good substitute, but they require some planning. You don't want to appear as a shimmering rainbow vision and start talking to your friend when there are a bunch of mortal observers around. Side effects can include panic attacks, mass hysteria, and psychological misdiagnosis. Ask your doctor if iris messages are right for you. SOD NYC occupies a cluster of townhouses and office buildings right off the Bowery. If not for the banners hanging outside, you'd never guess there is a school there. I didn't know my way around the whole campus, but I knew the 3 places where I was most likely to find Annabeth: her dormitory, the library, and the Black Ant, a Mexican restaurant around the corner. Figuring that she liked to study in the afternoon, I headed for the library. Technically, they shouldn't have allowed me in. The library is for students only, but the security guard on duty, Florence, knew me and liked me, so she just smiled and nodded as I walked past. See, I can be charming when I'm not causing chaos. Sometimes even when I am causing chaos. This month's student art display featured recycled clothing, in this case meaning a bunch of evening gowns and tuxedos made from plastic bags, candy wrappers and flattened aluminium cans. I didn't understand it, but I guess that's why I wasn't in design school. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Annabeth was camped out in her usual spot, a comfy sofa arrangement in the architecture section, with her study buddies, Dave and Hannah, who were laughing quietly at something Annabeth had just said. She wore an oversized UC Berkeley sweatshirt, distressed jeans and new Doc Martens. Her hair was Dutch braided, the tails curled out over her shoulders like raptor talons. Her eyes gleamed with humour. I'm not sure if you've ever had this experience. When you see someone you know from a distance, and for a split second you don't recognise them. Your brain just registers, "Oh, that person looks amazing." Then you realise it's someone you've known for years, your girlfriend in fact, and that sends a tingle of happiness through your whole body. Sure, maybe I had a twinge of angst too, because she was sitting there laughing with other people, and for the moment I was on the outside. I wouldn't call it jealousy though, more like anxious motivation. Annabeth was a natural people person. Everybody wanted to hang out with her and get her approval. She would always succeed, whether I was around or not. That made me even more determined to graduate and get into college with her, even if it meant doing torturous activities like studying or reading. Wow, the power she had over the way I thought. Kinda scary. As a son of Poseidon, all I can do, is make water coolers explode and talk to walruses. Hey, I said. Dave made room for me on the couch. Sup, Percy? Hannah gave me a forced smile. I don't think she liked me very much. Maybe because she wasn't sure I was good enough for Annabeth, which, hey, fair concern, but I always try to be nice to her. Annabeth took my hand. We were just talking about our new assignment, redesigning the Met. Oh, nice. I tried not to shudder. I'd had a bad experience at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and by bad experience I mean almost getting killed by my 6th grade math teacher when she turned out to be a fury. I would go full postmodern, Dave said, like really open up the space and get rid of the classic columns and stuff. That's so last century. I'd make it avant-garde, Hannah said. Escher-esque stairways everywhere, you know. She aimed the question at me like a challenge. I had no idea what she was talking about, so I just nodded. What would you do, Percy? Dave asked. I had a moment of panic. I managed to avoid blurting out that the theme was free will versus fate. The only Met redesign I could think of would be to build safe rooms and sword dispensers everywhere so young demigods could survive monster attacks more easily, but I couldn't exactly share that with Hannah and Dave. No idea, I admitted. I'll leave designing to the experts. I turned to Annabeth. What was your idea? Dave and Hannah started giggling again. I was just telling them, Annabeth said. Glass and marshmallows. Sorry? Glass and marshmallows. Genius, said Dave. Bonkers, said Hannah. I don't get it, I said. The nearest librarian glanced over and raised an eyebrow. It wasn't a shh, but it was as close as I'd ever gotten. Annabeth continued at lower volume. So you know how the Met has thousands of pieces of art just sitting in warehouses? My plan is to triple the display space, redo the whole building as a giant spiral of glass floors and walls around a central atrium. The art would be protected inside the glass, and those see-through panels would let you examine the art from the back, the front, above, below. You'd feel like you were floating in a three-dimensional cloud of art. And the marshmallows? I asked, because I tend to focus on things that are tasty. Big, soft, white beanbag chairs, she said, all through the museum. No more uncomfortable benches. When kids come in, they can flop anywhere they want and relax and enjoy the art. Or take a nap, I suggested. That's valid too, Annabeth said. It's a public space. Why not take a nap with a statue of Athena or a Frida Kahlo self-portrait? Comfy marshmallows in a glass temple, I said. Okay, I'm sold. She squeezed my hand. So what's up with you? Oh, just got an assignment I wasn't expecting. I wondered if you could help. Annabeth's expression turned more serious. She knew exactly what I was saying, even if Dave and Hannah didn't. She can't do all your homework for you, dude, Hannah said. Yeah, she has to do our homework, Dave said. Oh, you two, Annabeth said, but she gave them a smile. Okay, Jackson, I can spare you a few minutes. Come on. She hauled me up and led me out of the library. Dave and Hannah whispering behind our backs, probably wondering what Annabeth saw in me given my complete ignorance of architectural design. Outside, we walked to Annabeth's favourite thinking spot, a park bench under a maple tree in a nearby churchyard. She told me some famous architect was buried there. Peter Stuyvesant? Yeah, that's the dude. They'd named like half the stuff in the neighbourhood for him, so he must have been great with glass and marshmallows. Annabeth said she felt inspired there, which was good enough for me. We sat watching the traffic crawl along 2nd Avenue, enjoying the perfect weather, cool, crisp and sunny, the kind you wanted to bottle up and open in the middle of August when Manhattan was a swamp. So, Annabeth turned to face me. What's the quest? I told her about my meeting with Hecate. Annabeth listened with the kind of intensity most people only give to their favourite songs, like she wanted to memorise every word, analyse the meaning of every line and how it made her feel. She is a natural problem solver. Once I finished bringing her up to speed, I expected her to frown and start running mental equations, gaming out scenarios for all the things that might go wrong during a school week as Hecate's house-sitters. Instead, she laughed. That's awesome. She kissed me on the cheek like I'd given her a gift. It is? I asked. Which part? Taking care of demonic pets or getting incinerated if we fail? She waved away my concerns. We won't fail. Look, if I can play fetch with Cerberus, I can take care of a hellhound and a polecat. I winced. I still have nightmares about the Hades three-headed guard dog. Sometimes I wake up smelling Cerberus's sulphurous breath in my face before I realise I just need to brush my teeth. For Annabeth, though, our meeting with Cerberus had been the best part of our first excursion into the underworld. Granted, that wasn't saying much. Besides, she said, this means we have a venue for our party. Oh, you don't, wait, seriously? She didn't look like she was kidding. A few weeks ago, Annabeth had confided that she'd always wanted to design a haunted house. She'd grown up mostly at Camp Half-Blood, so she'd never done any of the typical Halloween activities, like trick-or-treating, scary movies, or costume parties. She dreamed of creating a terrifying experience for all our friends. To me, that seemed a little strange, since we had terrifying experiences all year round without having to design them. This being our last year in high school, Annabeth was determined to achieve this goal. The only problem was that she lived in a dorm and I lived in a tiny apartment. We couldn't have a haunted house at camp either because our camp director, Mr. D, wouldn't allow it. It's hard to know why. Probably because if he couldn't have fun, nobody could have fun. And Mr. D's idea of fun would have been to turn us all into Amazon River dolphins. I didn't want to test him. We'd half-heartedly planned our Halloween party for this coming Friday in Central Park, but it wasn't ideal. Annabeth couldn't construct a house of horrors there. Even hanging decorations in the trees would be risky. The cops were liable to chase us off. Besides, running around the park in costumes would feel too much like LARPing. You are serious, I realised. You want to have our party at Hecate's mansion? Well, she's not going to be there, Annabeth pointed out. We just have to figure out what time she'll be back and finish cleaning up before that. Why not? I wasn't even sure where to start with the why nots. Usually I was the one suggesting boneheaded ideas. It was Annabeth's job to explain all the reasons why they were boneheaded. I wasn't used to our switching roles. I mentioned the incineration, didn't I? Also, Hecate's the goddess of mist and magic. Don't you think she'll know if we have a party at her house? Hecate thinks Halloween is all about her, right? If she finds out, she'll probably see the party as a form of worship. Besides, we'll be super respectful. Respectful, I said. Have you met our friends? I wonder if her house has enough cobwebs, Annabeth mused, or if I should buy some more. Now my arachnophobic girlfriend is talking about buying cobwebs. Who are you? No spiders, she said. Just cobwebs, for ambience. Listen, I'm going to run and get my stuff. I'll ask Hannah to cover for me, since I won't be sleeping in the dorm this week. Oh my God, this is so great. I'll meet you at the Black Ant in an hour. We'll get dinner to go. She kissed me and ran off toward her dormitory. So, both Grover and Annabeth were weirdly excited about the Hecate challenge. There were cobwebs, a weasel, and Mexican food in my immediate future. Even by my standards, this was going to be a strange week. Chapter 4. Turns out I am salmon-flavoured. I could have done without the grasshopper pizza. When we picked up dinner at the Black Ant, Annabeth decided to get adventurous. Along with our usual enchiladas and tacos, she ordered the liudas, basically beans, cheese and spicy grasshoppers baked on a large tortilla. They're really good, she assured me, and bug protein is way more sustainable than other meats. Grover's a vegetarian, I reminded her. I got him mushroom tacos. I'm also considering becoming a vegetarian, at least for tonight. Oh, stop, she said. You need to try new things. Besides, we should eat something special for our first night at Hecate's. I shut up and decided to count my blessings that the Black Ant didn't offer Eye of Newt enchiladas. We collected our bag full of mushroom and grasshopper entrees and then headed uptown to Gramercy Park. I'd never spent much time in that neighbourhood. It's kind of screamed rich people live here. Move along, Percy Jackson. Rows of elegant brown stones and fancy apartment buildings faced a leafy rectangular park, which was surrounded by a black wrought iron fence to keep out the riffraff. From what I'd heard, you could only get into the park if you owned one of the surrounding residences, which granted you a key to open the gates. I guess that made the area attractive to billionaires. They could boast about having a Gramercy Park key if they got tired of boasting about the sports teams or private jets they owned. Personally, I didn't get the appeal. Manhattan has hundreds of perfectly good public parks that are a lot bigger and free. Maybe that's why I'll never be a billionaire. I figured it would be easy to find Hecate's house. Gramercy Park West is only a block long. Even without knowing the house number, all we had to do was stroll down the sidewalk looking for a place witchy enough to be the goddess's secret lair. We passed the manse twice before we spotted it. The whole facade was an optical illusion. If you looked at it from either side, its features blurred, blending into the other townhouses around it. The mansion only revealed itself when you looked at it dead on. Despite the clear evening, a layer of fog hung over the narrow front yard. Tendrils of mist curled through skeletal white bushes in the garden. A walkway made of cobblestones, or maybe human craniums, wound toward the front porch. The stone house itself was a 5-story patchwork of weathered granite slabs, literal tombstones, some with the names and dates of the deceased still visible. Crouching gargoyles leered down at us from either side of the gabled roof. Black cast-iron filigree framed the windows, ran across the railing of the second-floor balcony, and spilled down either side of the main entrance like a mourning shawl made of metal lace. If Hecate wasn't renting this place out for funerals and goth mitzvahs, she was missing out on big bucks. "Okay, you're right," I told Annabeth. "This is already a perfect haunted house." "See?" Annabeth stepped back and studied the roofline. "I bet those gargoyles come to life." "Not taking that bet." My fingers twitched. I was tempted to grab my pen sword from my pocket, but I didn't think it would do me much good. If Hecate decided to attack us with gargoyles, tombstones, or even shrubbery, well, it was her front yard. She could do what she wanted. I remembered my mum's unsettled expression when I'd mentioned Gramercy Park. She was one of the rare mortals who could see through the mist. I wondered if what had happened to her down here had anything to do with this half-invisible mansion. "You okay?" Annabeth asked. "Look, you don't have to eat the grasshopper leodas." "It's not that," I said. "It's just..." I struggled to complete the thought. I had a bad feeling. I wasn't sure why. As usual, my ratio of answers to bad feelings was way out of balance. Before I could find words, I heard the clopping of hooves on pavement. Either a horse carriage had veered off course from Central Park, or our friendly neighbourhood satyr was running to join us. "Hi," Grover said breathlessly. He'd accessorised his earlier outfit, minus the Crocs, with a massive rucksack over one shoulder, a walking stick, and a day-glow orange cap stitched with little dancing satyrs. I would have thought he was going on a camping trip, but since Grover lives in nature, I guess this was how he geared up for a week in the city, exploring the great indoors. "I got bedrolls, a kerosene lantern, snacks..." "Hold on," I said. "You picked all that up in Central Park?" "Rats," he said. "Rats?" I glanced at Annabeth for clarification, but she just shrugged. "It's great," Grover promised. "Those guys collect everything. You know, reduce, reuse, recycle." He looked like he was ready to launch into a lecture about the virtues of bartering with rodents. Then his eyes drifted up to the gargoyles on the roof. "Oh, wow." "I know, spooky," Annabeth agreed. Grover scratched his goatee. I was going to say the one on the left looks like my Aunt Helena, but I guess that's the same thing. He beamed at us. "So, we ready for this?" "No," I said. "Yes," said Annabeth. We followed the cranium brick road to the front porch. Being under the wrought iron latticework made me feel like I'd climbed into a torture cage for me and my closest friends. Maybe that was the effect Hecate's architect had been going for. The front door was divided into 3 wooden panels like a folding screen, each glossy black, with a silver door knocker in the middle. Each knocker was an animal head, a horse, a lion, a dog, that I associated with Hecate and also with changing my pants. Annabeth studied the panels. "Maybe it's a test. We have to choose one. Or maybe Hecate opens all of them at once," I said, "and sings something in 3-part harmony." Grover shuddered. "You have a dark imagination. How about we knock on all 3 together?" "No!" screamed all the knockers at once. I'd like to tell you I was surprised, but talking door knockers was not the weirdest scenario I'd envisaged. At least they were small and nailed to the door. They probably couldn't do worse than bite our fingers off. "One of us always speaks the truth," said the horse. "One of us always lies," said the lion. I was about to say, "Wait, I know this riddle." Then the dog chimed in, "And one of us always says something completely random. Rutabaga." The horse and the lion glanced at the dog. "Dude," said the horse. "We've talked about this," said the lion. Carburettor," barked the dog. Even Annabeth seemed at a loss for words. You must now face our challenge," cried the horse. "Or else." Fortunately, we were saved from "or else." The door opened on its own, all 3 panels folding together as the knockers yelled, "Ow, stop that, a poop deck!" Standing in the doorway was a ginormous hellhound. Seeing a black Labrador at the size of a rhinoceros, with blood-red eyes, a slobbering maw, and dagger-like fangs, my first instinct was to give her a big hug. I couldn't help it. She looked so much like my old friend Mrs. O'Leary. Then I reminded myself that Mrs. O'Leary was an exception among hellhounds. Most of them tolerated demigods only as appetizers. Grover reacted first, which was probably better than me giving the dog a surprise hug. "Hi, I'm Grover," he said. Do we need to finish the door knocker challenge, or, The hellhound barked with such force it parted my hair down the middle. "I see." Grover turned to us and translated. "This is Hecuba. She says to ignore the door knockers. They haven't worked properly since the school closed down." Annabeth frowned. "School? I think that's what she said." Grover paused, although that particular kind of bark can mean a lot of things. School, kennel, pea spot. I was glad I hadn't had to learn annual speak for my school's foreign language requirement. I'd barely been able to master numbers and colours in Spanish, even with my friend Leo Valdez as a tutor. Woof! Hecuba barked again, her eyes fixed on me. Grover looked troubled. I don't think so. He faced me. You're not salmon-flavoured, are you? She says you smell like you're salmon-flavoured. Annabeth covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. I added one more thing to my mental list of stuff to thank my dad for. Apparently, I smelled like Peruna Catch of the Day to hellhounds. I wondered if I should reevaluate why Mrs. O'Leary liked me so much. No, I'm just Percy, I told the dog. That's my name, not my flavour. Also, kind of your flavour, Annabeth added. Then to the dog, I'm Annabeth. Hecate asked us to watch you for the week. Hecuba tilted her head, the way dogs do when they hear walk or treat or son of Poseidon for dinner. She barked a third time, and I realised her breath did in fact smell like salmon. I wondered if it was from the last demigod Hecate had invited over. Great, thanks, Grover said. She says come on in. We followed the hellhound inside, leaving behind the muffled cries of the door knockers. Wait, we work fine. Pork rinds. Inside, a black marble foyer opened into a great room that reminded me of a medieval church. Not that I'd ever really been in a medieval church, but I saw Spamalot once, so I felt like an expert. Carved wooden beams held up the peaked ceiling, which was painted black and speckled with silver constellations. Stained glass windows lined the walls on either side, despite the fact that the townhouse was wedged up against other townhouses, so there shouldn't have been any side windows. In the corners of the room, more stone gargoyles squatted on columns. Hanging from the central rafter was a massive candelabra, an iron wheel with lit candles that looked like it would really hurt when it eventually landed on me. I found that the more something could potentially hurt, the more likely it is to happen. And no, I'm not going to dwell on how depressing that is. Persian rugs covered the grey stone floor, all embroidered with scenes of tortured spirits. 4 straight-backed mahogany benches faced the far end of the room, where a dais was set up with a lectern and a grand piano. Above that, affixed to the railing of a wrap-around staircase, was a crossed pair of unlit torches. It was the kind of room a god would design, grandiose, impractical, and uncomfortable, like Hecate had thought. This is probably how humans live, right? Sure. I couldn't imagine spending 4 nights here without developing an anxiety disorder. Unfortunately, that was my quest. Bummer. The hellhound padded over to the dais and barked. A smaller animal, who'd been curled up asleep on the lectern, lifted its head. Judging from its noodle-like body, triangular face, and the mask of black fur around its beady eyes, I guessed it was a polecat. It yawned, stretched, and then farted with a sound like air being pinched from a balloon. Hi. Grover strolled up to the varmint with a total disregard for toxic fumes. I'm Grover. How do you do? I wouldn't have offered my hand to the polecat. It had pointy teeth. Nevertheless, the polecat stood on its high legs and extended one dainty paw, shaking politely with Grover. Then it farted again, because etiquette. Gale? Grover asked. I seriously hoped he wasn't translating the polecat's flatulence. That's a lovely name. These are my friends, Annabeth and Percy. Before I could say anything like hello or what in the God's names have you been eating, the smell hit me. My eyes watered. If I was going to spend a school week with Gale, I'd need to go shopping for deodorizers. Maybe I could tie a new car-scented air freshener to her tail. Then from above us, a voice called, Ah, there you are. Standing on the balcony at the top of the staircase was the goddess Hecate. To answer your burning question, what do gods wear at home? I can now confirm, yoga pants and an oversized sleep shirt. Hecate's hair was tied back in a loose bun, and her face and shirt were covered with dark smudges, like my mum when she's been cleaning the oven. Sorry, Mum. She definitely did not look ready for visitors. Are we early? I asked. We can come back. No. Hecate gave me a smile that was about as warm and welcoming as her decor. You're just in time. I can give you the 3 drachma tour of the house. Cool, Grover said. Hecate stared at us expectantly. I wondered if I was supposed to bow or offer my hand or fart with gusto. Oh, Annabeth said at last. You're not joking about the 3 drachmas. The goddess's eyes glinted. I never joke about drachmas, my dear. Annabeth fished around in her pockets. She came up with 3 golden coins. As usual, I was grateful she was so prepared. Otherwise, I would have had to get into the whole awkward conversation about whether Hecate took IOUs. Just put them on the piano, Hecate said. Once Annabeth had made her offering, Hecate's smile warmed just a bit. Right then, coming on up. The eels won't feed themselves. Chapter 5. We enter the laboratory of forbidden ice cream. Yes, eels. In Hecate's second-floor hallway, she kept a massive, freestanding glass column of salt water filled with morays because she told us their toxic mucus was good for potions. That was more information than I needed to know. 4 long yellow monsters glided through the tank, wriggling around Coral and fixing me with their soulless blue eyes. Hecate showed us how to feed them from a nearby freezer full of dead fish, but she needn't have bothered. The eels were telling me all about it telepathically. Their thoughts chiselled their way into my skull like ice picks. She feeds us 6 times a day, said the one who thought of himself as Larry. Only feed them once a day, Hecate said. We get 20 fish each, said another eel, Fortunato. 1 fish each, Hecate instructed. And the polecat looks tasty too, said the eel called Bigwig. We can eat the polecat. We'll figure it out, I told the goddess. I get along great with sea creatures. Feed us all the things, warned the fourth eel, Janet, or we will bite you. We were off to a great start. A half-dozen side corridors branched off from Eel Hall, each lined with black lacquered doors stencilled with creepy Art Deco skeletons. Art Creepo. These are bedrooms, Hecate said, gesturing down one of the corridors, but they are only for the lucky acolytes I train in magic. Annabeth looked interested. Do you do that often? I haven't for many years, Hecate sighed. Once this mansion was a school for magic. Weird concept, I muttered, because sometimes I blurt stuff out that should not be blurted. It was just that I was having trouble imagining students running through the house, zapping one another with wands and making potions out of eel mucus. Before Hecate could smite me, Annabeth jumped in. Hecuba mentioned that the school closed. Why was that? Hecate gave the hellhound a withering look. We don't talk about the school if we want to remain a happy family. The dog tucked her tail between her legs. On Hecate's shoulder the polecat chittered, probably teasing the hellhound. Grover cleared his throat. So where do we sleep, then? He sounded vaguely worried, since sleep is one of his favourite things. Hecate hesitated. If I were a betting man, I'd guess that the question of our sleeping arrangements hadn't occurred to her. You may, camp in the living room? She offered. Awesome, Grover grinned triumphantly. Glad I brought extra bedrolls. I imagined myself sleeping under the iron candelabra, waiting for it to fall and cut me into the shape of a sugar cookie. Or maybe I'd stretch out on the grand piano next to Gale the farting polecat. There were so many options. What about bathrooms? I asked. Hecate frowned. Another mortal necessity she probably hadn't thought about in years. The need to flush. She gestured vaguely down another corridor. You will find rooms with baths down there. You just created new ones, didn't you? I asked. No, she snapped. Now, down here you will find the library. Also off limits, I guessed. Hecate arched her eyebrows. I don't limit access to books, Percy Jackson. I'm not a monster. If you think you can navigate the knowledge in my library, be my guest. But if that knowledge turns you into a flaming purple armadillo, don't come crying to me later. I made a note of which hallway she was indicating. I didn't want to stumble around at night, looking for a toilet, and find myself in a room full of hazardous, magical textbooks. Plus, the warning about the armadillo sounded oddly specific, like it had happened before. Annabeth, however, had a gleam in her eyes. To her, knowledge was irresistible, even the flaming purple kind, which kind of troubled me. Grover raised his hand. And is there a kitchen? He pointed to Annabeth's bag of Mexican food. Our tacos and enchiladas are probably getting cold. He sounded definitely worried now. He liked eating even more than sleeping. He really liked enchiladas, which he said was so important they deserved a separate category from food. Hecate scoffed. Of course I have a kitchen, although we call it the laboratory. It's in the basement. Follow me. She led us down a different stairwell. How many were there? I got the sense that the house was way bigger than it ought to be, as if the inside, like the outside, blurred and blended into the surrounding buildings. I hoped I didn't wander into a neighbour's house by accident and surprise them in the shower. The hellhound Hecuba padded behind us, still looking morose from her mum's scolding. She left a trail of drool, which I suspected would make it easy to track her comings and goings. The polecat Gale was still perched on Hecate's shoulder. She had a talent for waiting until I was directly behind her before ripping a stinker. The basement turned out to be the brightest and most spacious area of the house. The white stone floor gleamed like ice milk. Windows let in bright light through frosted glass, which was weird since the sun had already started going down. Maybe each bank of windows existed in a different time zone, at just the right time of day to capture the perfect light. In the centre of the room stood a line of stainless steel workstations that reminded me of morgue tables. Along the walls were enough white granite counters, mixing bowls, blenders, cutting boards, ovens, and range tops to keep an army of chefs busy. Displayed in glass-doored cabinets were hundreds of jars, vials, and beakers filled with colourful liquids. Gooey objects floated in some of them, and I really did not want to know what they were. On the nearest stove, several covered pots simmered and steamed. Hecate spread her arms proudly. I know what you're thinking. This looked like the set of The Great Witch's Brew-Off, and you're right. We filmed all 7 seasons here. Oh, Grover said, I loved the episode with the growth elixirs, when Alejandro turned into a Hyperborean giant. A classic, Hecate agreed. Season 3, episode 5. I glanced at Annabeth, who looked as mystified as I was. Maybe we could find the show on Hecate's TV and binge it this week. She probably had a subscription to Olympus Plus or whatever the gods were watching these days. Grover sniffed the air. What is that heavenly smell? He followed his nose, past the simmering pots that did not smell heavenly, to the furthest counter, where an old-fashioned ice cream maker rumbled away, a silver canister churning on a wooden bucket filled with crushed ice. I hadn't seen one of those in years. Whatever was inside smelled of fresh strawberries, ripening in the summer sun, just like the fields at Camp Half-Blood. A drop of pink liquid trickled from the canister's rim, and Grover was shaking as he tried to restrain himself. The aroma was so powerful, even I wanted to dip my finger in it and have a taste. You will touch none of my projects, Hecate warned. They must all be allowed to simmer on the stove just as they are until I return. I will make an exception, however, for this strawberry milkshake experiment. Grover's eyes widened. You will? Tomorrow at precisely 10 a.m. it will be the proper consistency. I will allow you to unplug the motor, take the canister out of the ice using safety gloves, and transfer it to the freezer above there. That is all you may do. Absolutely no taste testing, or there will be dire consequences. Do you understand? Grover looked like he was trying to swallow a golf ball-sized lump of disappointment. He nodded glumly. Good, Hecate said. Otherwise you may use the kitchen to prepare food as you wish. Now, enough about your mortal needs. Let me show you how to properly care for my pets. Chapter 6. Raw chicken carcasses and where to find them. Hecate liked rules. She had rules about feeding the pets, rules about walking them, rules about grooming them, and rules about how to follow the rules about the rules. These are Hecuba's vitamins, she said, standing in front of a cabinet lined with mason jars, each filled with what looked like chicken nuggets in various colours, grey, gold, green, blue, and pink and white polka-dotted. She gets 2 each morning out of each jar. Each jar? I asked. It looked like too many vitamins, even for a hellhound-sized stomach. Very important for her joints and fur, Hecate insisted. She doesn't like them, but don't let her refuse. Over in the corner of the den, Hecuba curled up on her doggy bed, which was the size of a bouncy house, put her face on her paws and sighed heavily. I didn't blame her. I was imagining how much time and work it would take every morning to coax her into eating 40 medicinal McNuggets. She can have 2 cups of kibble for breakfast and dinner, Hecate continued. No treats while I'm gone, or she'll think she can take advantage of you. What she called kibble looked to me like a trash can full of rocks. The measuring scoop had been fashioned from a gallon milk jug. The kibble smoked like dry ice and gave off an odour like hot asphalt. Yum, I said. She loves it, Hecate insisted, and then turned to her hellhound. Don't you, pretty girl? Hecuba's big bloodshot eyes seemed to send the message, I hate my life. That's my pretty girl, Hecate cooed. Now, she gets walks twice a day, morning and evening. In here you'll find her supplies. She opened a closet door, revealing a box of extra hefty 40-gallon garden waste bags that had been relabelled poop bags for Hecuba. Hanging on the wall was an assortment of gigantic leashes, one pink, one yellow, one with daisies and one with Hello Kitty designs. Just don't take her any further than Pennsylvania, Hecate advised. Pennsylvania? Grover asked. Hecate turned to Annabeth. Are your friends a bit slow, or do they just have bad hearing? Annabeth kept a straight face. They're fine, just a little in awe. You are a goddess, after all. Hecate looked satisfied with that answer. Well, I'm glad they have a sensible young woman to direct them, then. If I still had my school... She hesitated and then sighed. Never mind. It's very important that the animals not be allowed outside without their leashes. The accessories are ensorcelled to make sure my little troublemakers can't escape them and go romping off on their own. If one of you were to open the door and let them out... We won't, I promised, because I was not in the mood to see another demonstration of Hecate's fiery, three-headed death threats. I also didn't want to be ensorcelled. That sounded painful. Good, Hecate said cheerily. Now, let's talk about Gale. I wasn't ready for that conversation, not once I saw the raw chicken. Gale had her own polecat playroom. The place was a forest of carpeted columns riddled with polecat-sized holes, so Gale had plenty of places to scamper, hide and fart. A thick bed of cedar shavings on the floor partially covered up the aroma of intestinal distress, but it still smelled like Gale had made herself right at home. Along the back wall stood a row of combat dummies, the kind you'd see in self-defence class, with pedestal bases, padded upper bodies and rubber heads with crew cuts. The polecat had been hard at work attacking these. I could tell from the chewed-off noses, the ripped-open guts, and the claw marks where the dummies' groins would have been. All that I could have dealt with. A polecat has to have her fun, but I almost lost it when Hecate showed us Gale's food supply. The red enamelled refrigerator opened to reveal a row of chicken carcasses hanging on meat hooks. As soon as Gale saw them, she jumped from Hecate's shoulder and began chittering excitedly, running circles around Hecate's feet. "Silly girl," the goddess chuckled. "Wait for me to set it up." Hecate removed a chicken carcass from the refrigerator and walked over to a large meat hook hanging by a chain from the ceiling. She impaled the chicken and let it swing. Horror set in as I realised that the polecat was supposed to leap onto it, but it was 6 feet in the air. No way could Gale... The polecat leapt up like a fuzzy rocket and sank her fangs into the chicken's left thigh. She clawed her way onto the swinging poultry, then disappeared inside its, cavity? Growling, shredding and slurping sounds issued from the chicken's chest, and then with a terrible rip, Gale's head punched through the chicken's rib cage. Her eyes gleamed with pleasure, her teeth was bloody, her fur coat with chicken flesh and fat. "Oh," Grover said in a weak falsetto, "I was hoping she ate mouse-flavoured biscuits or something, But instead, we got the monster from Alien. Even Annabeth looked a little freaked out, and she was the least freak-outable of the three of us. She said, which sounded like a noise you might make right before your lunch comes up. How often does she do this? Breakfast and dinner, said Hecate, with a pleased mother smile. She doesn't eat the whole thing, obviously. I looked at the polecat, who had dived back into the carcass and was making it shake as flesh and fat dribbled out the bottom. Wow. Hecate frowned at me. The best part of a meal is playing with your food, Percy Jackson. Surely you know this. I thought about when I used to make castles with mashed potatoes and peas when I was a little dude. Then I thought about all the monsters who had toyed with me before trying to eat me for dinner. True, I said. So we let her chew on it for a while and then... Gale dropped from the chicken, chittered at me a few times just to show off her fangs, and then started grooming herself like a cat. I suddenly understood why her coat looked so glossy. A good conditioning with chicken fat. Then you clean it up. Hecate snapped her fingers, causing the carcass to dissolve in a burst of dust. Easy. I noted that she'd left gross little bits of food on the floor for us to take care of. Grover tried to snap his fingers. It was a trick he'd never really mastered. Even if he could have, I suspected he wouldn't have been able to magic away dead chickens. We were in for some fun work with Gale's leftovers. Now, Hecate said, it's important that you use the proper terminology when talking about Gale. She gets very upset if you call her any other type of mustelid. Whatever you do, never call her a weasel. Gale jumped and squeaked as if someone had stuck a pin in her butt. Her eyes turned bright red. Steam came out of her ears. I was fairly certain most polecats did not do this. Of course, Grover stammered. Everyone knows polecats are much larger than weasels. Also, polecats have a black musk of fur that extends all the way to their nose. Everyone knows that, I agreed. She's also not a ferret, Hecate said, or a mink, or a vole, and definitely not a skunk. Gale hissed in outrage. Nice polecat, Annabeth said. Definitely a polecat. Gale sniffed indignantly, then started playing with her nearest combat dummy. And when I say playing, I mean she leapt on its head and began to chew a hole in its face. Adorable, I said. I know, Hecate sighed contentedly. I hate to leave them, even for a few days, but I trust they will be in good hands. She looked at me, frowned, and then gazed at Annabeth a bit more hopefully. Gale's harness is on the wall over there. She can go with you when you take Hukuba for walks. The harness was black leather with stainless steel spikes, because Gale was metal. Hecate showed us a few other highlights of the polecat cave, the cardboard box where Gale liked to sleep, next to the expensive polecat habitat that had come in the box, but Gale wouldn't even look at it. There was a pallet of extra cedar shavings to spread on the floor as needed, a pooper scooper, a grooming kit, and a polecat toothbrush with special bunny-flavoured toothpaste. Finally, Hecate led us back to the great room. What else? She mused. Ah, yes, my symbols of power. She pointed to the crossed set of torches hanging from the balcony railing. I am leaving you this set, but they should be only used in the event of an extreme emergency. Is that clear? It was absolutely not clear. What were we supposed to do with a couple of torches? Did it count as an emergency if a Hyperborean giant came by and asked us for a light? Since Hecate already thought I was an idiot, I figured the safest thing to do was to nod. Got it. Good. Hecate glanced at the stained glass windows, which were darkening with the sunset. I must be off. Tokyo Disneyland will be opening soon, and they're holding a spooky boo parade in my honour. Any questions? No? Good. She snapped her fingers once more. Her nightshirt and yoga pants transformed into an elaborate black evening gown, with black silk gloves, a diamond necklace, and a golden tiara in her thick black hair. She looked like dark Cinderella, ready to torture her wicked stepsisters, the prince and the fairy godmother, for not getting her a better carriage. The house keys are hanging by the front door on a keychain with little crossed torches, she said. Always look up when you leave. I will see you at midnight on Friday. If all is in order, you will have your recommendation letter, Percy Jackson. If all is not in order, I won't need the recommendation letter, I guessed, because I won't have a future. She patted me on the cheek with her silk glove. I knew you were smarter than you looked. Ta-ta! The goddess disappeared in a swirl of black soot. I looked at Annabeth and Grover. I tried to think of something encouraging to say. Then I noticed Takuba and Gale staring at us from the doorways of their respective rooms. Their eyes gleamed. They both grinned, baring their teeth as if thinking, Mama's gone. Now the fun begins.